My name is Lorraine Comer and I work here in the museum as Head of Education, and I have responsibility for working with a team in education across 4 sites within Decorative Arts and History, Natural History, Kildare Street, that's Museum of Archaeology, and we have a Museum of Mayo as well, Museum of Country Life. And you're all very welcome, and we look forward to working with you over the next few minutes until 3:15. And Helen is a colleague working in Collins Barracks.
Yeah. And then we've got far less time than we had earlier, so we'll be trying to be quick. Just very quickly to say that both Lorraine and myself we're both former teachers. And we would have said that to the last group as well, so it's good just to very quickly say that at second level. My own background was was art teaching, and we I suppose really welcome and value this opportunity to meet people like yourselves today, because our remit is to create learning and engagement programs for everybody, really, I suppose, all audiences. Schools are a very sort of important audience, and within that the youth audience, I suppose, and they are notorious from all the audience research that you'd read about from museum sort of studies. Teenagers and youth are the most difficult to reach in many ways, for all the reasons that you probably know. So, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be trying to engage with them, and I suppose an opportunity like today is great for us because we're getting that chance to talk to you. So I'll have to be very, very quick. What we're going to do today is just something that it was an exercise that we've done ourselves with as museum educators in training that we did around audience research. It was a methodology for evaluation, and we thought it would be an appropriate kind of maybe exercise for yourselves today. So I hope that's the case. You can see in front of you some plasticine, or more or less, somebody said there, that's what I used to call it. And what we're going to ask you to do is to work with this for a very just 10 minutes to build or create something in plasticine that would be a response to the concept of museum, the idea of a museum. What is your reaction or your response to the word museum? It could be this museum, the National Museum of Ireland, it could be any museum, it could be museums in general. That's totally up to yourself. If you want to work on your own, or work with somebody, or not do it at all, that's fine, whatever, but it's just have a go if you'd like to try in 10 minutes to create something that would be a representation or a response to the idea of museum. So your 10 minutes starts now.
They're not formal. But we also
we're down in Limerick.
You have
know it.
Actually, well, I think maybe if everybody wanted to go around and have a look at what everybody's done, it would be.
You're right now, like they are.
Just a tight space.
Where's that? Yeah. Oh, really? With the new one they redid. Is that the dead museum that they rebuilt? It's interactive now.
I was trying to think of a museum like supporting people with different layers,
You've definitely done that before.
In terms of could be the food bowl as well. More of what figurative.
You're the leader.
So maybe if we want to get back into the place, because I'm afraid we're very tight for time, and we want to try and cover as much of the areas we covered earlier with the other group and get a bit of discussion. But is there anybody who would like to kick off, I suppose, and would like to volunteer to talk a bit about what they've done? What we'd like to do is maybe just to get a bit of a discussion going on because I think maybe what might strike you, and certainly what strikes me, and the same with the last group, is how different people's responses are. The variety of responses, and that's immediately obvious. So I don't know, does anybody want to kick off?
I'd love to say something, and it's actually not about my piece of work, it's Saoirse's piece of work then. Did we see her do what she has to?
Yeah.
I took a group for the first time to the Hunt Museum in Limerick a few weeks ago. very small Henry Moore exhibition in there. Some of the pieces had ring glass cases, and some were just not. And the girls just wanted to touch, and they were just like, no, you cannot touch it. And they weren't going to do any harm. And it really, they were like, why can't we touch it? There's nothing to stop us touching it apart from the sign. That was a bit sad.
But I suppose there is a thing with, I mean, I'd agree with that because I've had that experience, but there is a thing about it that if everybody touched it, then I suppose there is the wear and tear kind of thing. So I suppose you've got that issue, depending what the product is.
Some of the materials would disintegrate, wouldn't they?
But actually,
Sorry,
it's
go
a
on.
very good point as well, because what we can do within museums and what we do is also provide opportunities for people to touch certain objects.
That's what I spotted yesterday when I was in there, and it was really nice to actually say, okay, please touch me.
Maybe we should have more of those opportunities within our galleries. Okay, great.
You know what was really great about that though was that they said the only thing that's stopping us is the sign. And actually I thought that was really good because I'm just thinking of all the barriers you put up to yourself before you ever, when you walk into a place, you're self-censoring. And they were saying we don't have to actually, in a way, be controlled by that. Because I would have done something like that, except I spent so much time in the museum over the last few years, and I know about the handling boxes that I think that's so brilliant. So that when I was doing it, I thought the torque always really, and all the gold when I go into the museum, it always just hits me. Of course, I suppose maybe I like jewellery, but I just always think how fantastic. But that would have been the thing I would have done up until a couple of years ago.
It's interesting. We were sitting here just chatting away about our youth services and not looking. I wasn't looking what he was doing, and I was doing my own thing. And then we stood up and oh God, we have the exact same but like it's just interesting, like, because I do think that young people learn when they interact and they engage with a certain thing, and there's that kind of feeling that it's out of their like league almost, and it's not interactive. It's not kind of inclusive of their way of learning, like, you know, and it does feel like you can't go there, like. So I suppose I'm interested how we can interact. I know I'm from a youth service and does himself, I'm not speaking for him, but like I'm interested in how we can get my young person to come and interact. That's not a certain type of young person, but it's more inclusive of all young people.
That goes back though to what Peter Brooks was saying in there about building a relationship. And once you actually try to build a relationship with them beforehand, during and afterwards, all these barriers can be overcome. And you can try to get it out of them instead of you coming up with a set of rules.
Yeah.
So if you build up the relationship, you actually ask them, usually the first thing I ask them is who owns this place? Because I work in a museum setting as well. And you know, once we establish that they're the ones who own it, well, then they're the ones who will protect it even more. So once we know what the rules are, I haven't found groups that are more respectful of the things that they should touch or that they should not touch than young people themselves, because you actually make the effort to establish that. And you see that all these rules are more disrespected by people who are typical museum goers than the ones who are not, because they know that the stuff is theirs and it's there to stay for them. So it's back to the relationship.
I brought a group, well, I came along with the group, and Jenny knows them, in Bridgewood Street, their summer project. So we're actually here. And they were able to try on clothes as part of the exhibition, and that was brilliant. And they were ages there, and there was like a box of bits and bobs, and they absolutely loved it.
I did that as an adult in the V&A, because there's a part of it where there are theatre costumes, you have bloomers and coats and robes and things, and I went as a kind of a 27 or 8-year-old with friends of mine, and there's just something irresistible about being given that opportunity to, particularly when it's costumes as well, and putting something on you. That's
If you got a photograph at the end, that would be better, wouldn't it?
Yeah. We had a
Now
group in
selfie.
Belfast like that. They were able. I didn't actually accompany them, but one of the other leaders did, and they like that. They tried on stuff in the museum and that, and they had a really good experience of it. Whereas I think generally people think of museums. My instinctive kind of from it being a child was old, dry, musty, do not touch things. But that would be been my experience of school tours, really, which is probably different to bringing your youth group, because I think they can behave a bit differently to a class in school as well, because you've built up a relationship, as you say, and there's a bit of trust involved, and if you're bringing them to that space, you're expecting them to respect it. So it's actually not something I thought of doing, bringing them here, for probably that reason. You know, whereas they go to other venues and theatre spaces and different things,
But you expect it to respect them as well. That's the main thing. Once you trust that, then you can, you know, because that's, I think it's more important for the museum to respect its visitors rather than the other way around. Because what is a museum without its people, without its users? You know?
But I think that museums are becoming like that, aren't they? They're trying to attract young people and be more interactive.
Does anybody else want to talk about what they created or what somebody else created just before we move on to the next part of this session? Anyone else? Some very interesting, you know, I'm very curious about them, so but I don't want to put anybody on the spot.
Point them out.
I kind of think that it's even the exhibition that's on here now, and that museums, I suppose, one of the roles to kind of bring to I suppose I work with disadvantaged kind of areas, and to bring those kids are so they feel like the museum is not about them and it's not for them, and they don't identify with any of those things. I suppose it's bringing the museum. My kind of piece was acting as a support, and there's so many layers of it, as you know, that they would bring, and there'd be some kind of seeds of themselves, and that they could, you know, even the display of some of their artwork. It's so powerful. They go, God, we're here, and then not in this kind of, it's almost like Mars to them, or it can be, that they see something like that. I suppose it's the whole idea of display, and then that can just then later on, I suppose, them becoming, you know, a kind of feeling that they can go that they belong there, that sense of belonging. I think that's very powerful. If there's more of those kind of things,
And that exhibition was, I mean, it meant an awful lot to the young people involved in the crafted initiative to have their works within the writing school.
Yeah.
And that's what they said when they were here on the 20th of November. So you're right. Gives them a sense of ownership.
Conscious of time, It's 3 o'clock. Got 15 minutes left. Will we move on to the next bit? I suppose, because just some of the things that you've said there. Actually, now we only have about 5 minutes for this presentation. That really should be about half an hour. But there are some of the things, like we do not every year, but we do exhibitions of students, like the Craft Ed. A couple of years ago, we had a project, part of the 3-year project with Larkin Community College, and we had photographs that the students had taken up in our balcony. And we have done, like, going back even further, we've done a local national school worked with us for a year, and we had an exhibition of their artwork. As you know, the outcomes of the project that we've worked with them on for a year, you know. So, and there's others that I could mention, but so we do try to do that, and we also have in our galleries, we have some interactive spaces like Barracks Life Room. Another one, Take a Seat, where you can design a chair. We invite you to design your ideal chair and stick it up on the wall. And we eventually hope to create an online gallery of those. And the designs that people have done are amazing. In our Asgard exhibition, we invite you to leave memories. And we've had incredible stories. And we're just getting the book that we have remade with extra pages to add in some of the stories that we've got from people. So you're absolutely right. We should have more of that. Every gallery should have a place like that. That would be my kind of dream. But anyway.
Sorry, can I just make one point just before you go on? I think it's important as well that, and I'm not going to name different museums, but you go into some museums and like the staff that are sort of there to make sure nothing is touched, like they need to be involved, I think, in discussions as well around, because like I certainly found, like I don't work directly with young people, I work with the adults who work with them, and I haven't brought them into spaces. Whereas, like I remember last year, one child just asked one of the guys that was doing security, just said, "Oh, have you seen the group?" And I'm not even going to repeat what I said, and I was standing there, and it wasn't very pleasant, and it wasn't helpful. And so I think that, I suppose, everybody needs, and it has gone back to what Jenny said about building up the relationship, that maybe it's even a case of, and certainly in the position I am, where I work with volunteers all over the city, like I have no problem bridging that gap and bringing the museum people together with the youth workers and the volunteers and saying, okay, these are sort of if you want to call them ground rules, but you know, like we're not coming in to wreck the place, and you know what I mean. So it is about dialogue and communication and where people are coming from. Yeah.
Very good. Okay, we're just very conscious of time, so we're kind of going to race into the next part of the workshop. And this is a presentation. It's really just a snapshot of who we are and what we do and what we have on offer. And it is that, it's just a snapshot, because in the museum we have the exhibitions, and they're the temporary ones, we have the permanent ones, but also we have a lot of programs around those exhibitions as well. And some of those programs include guided tours and workshops, and sometimes as well residencies. We work a lot with different partners. I mean, Jane, we've just worked with from Poetry Ireland on a number of different initiatives, and we would also be interested in working with NYCI and with yourselves as youth leaders. That's something that we would be interested in even starting some kind of conversation today about. Even if it is just, you know, some ideas about ways in which we could work together. These images that Helen is showing you are, you know, examples of the type of activity that happens within the galleries and within our dedicated learning spaces as well. I don't know whether you were over in the learning resource room. It's a room just based off Clark Square here, and oftentimes youth groups or schools in particular would go in there and would actually use that space for a workshop. So I'm going to hand over to Helen now to...
Yeah, and just I suppose to get back on the handling thing, and just I suppose to quickly say a bit about that, because I know this might be of interest or relevant to you, and say this we'll try and fly through, but like the object, the handling collections that we have are at the core of our education, sort of, you know, our services, and we've been building that up over the past 15 years, and I suppose just that mainly we do work with schools. I suppose, you know, we do work with young people through their school, coming in as a school. But when we do a whole load of workshops at all the 4 sites based around handling, there are all the things that are happening when a handling session is going on. It's developing language and listening skills, critical thinking skills. There's never a right or wrong answer to what students will say. So you're coming at it from that point of view. It's meeting the needs of a range of learning styles. The importance of multiple perspectives, you know, particularly say here in this museum, I suppose more so than in natural history, but you know, the idea of there isn't a right or you know, there isn't one way of seeing history. Depends what side you were on, it depends, you know, what time in history. So that idea that there is often more than one way to see an event or see a series of events, and that's really, you know, and discuss that and tease that out. And so, you know, those are the kinds of things that we would do in workshops. Lots of analysing, synthesising, letting each other talk, listening to each other, and then trying to maybe sometimes come to conclusions, joint conclusions, developing perceptions, ability for reflection, making judgments. So, and then obviously that all of that connecting with the objects that are on display. So as I say, we're building up our handling collection. We would have replica objects. When we make replicas, we ensure that they are well made. Like authenticity is really important. So if we're getting a set of 18th century undergarments that say a woman would have worn, we make sure that it is exactly the way there are companies that do this sort of thing, and they know they have the historical kind of background, so they do it, you know, like that. Same with bronze axe heads that are in the handling box, so the boxes that we have.
I might just mention that it's the handling box project, and it is a box that we created in collaboration with the education centres, the 21 education centres around the country, and we piloted it, and there was a really positive feedback from the schools at primary and post-primary levels. So those boxes are now going into all of the education centres around the country, and they're going to be loaned out to primary and post-primary schools. But there's the possibility of them being loaned out also to yourselves and others within the community that want to work with them. And they're a great resource. The teachers found and the students found them to be great for all sorts of different reasons that Helen mentioned earlier. But that's just something to think about, that network that we're using, and the loaning out of those boxes, or they're going to loan them out to the schools, but they're actually going to purchase these boxes now. And the first one we're doing is on the Bronze Age, but there will be other themes that could be used for other boxes that could be developed.
And just another resource that you might be interested in as well is we have learning spaces. So some of you might have been in our learning resource room today, and you were in the lecture theatre. like those spaces could be, you know, you could rent book those spaces. The learning resource room is ours to book. We have to share the other spaces like this space with the rest of the museum, so they're not, if you like, solely ours. But the learning resource rooms on each site belong, if you like, to us, and are for us to let out to, you know, we let them out to continuing professional development for teachers. We do some of our local now after school groups in this area use our rooms, and they work here, you know, drop into the learning resource room. But you could bring a group in, maybe take them around to something, if you're looking at a particular exhibition or theme, and you could book our learning resource room for a whole afternoon if you wanted, you know, it's there, and there's no cost to that, you know. It's so those are spaces that are you know, available for people to use, and just talking about the do not touch, like we have signage now in some of our galleries, please touch, you know, so there's an example there. There should be more of that in there, and that's the Barracks Life Room again, and in our Natural History Museum. And just the handling box, that's an example of that, just some of the material that we might put into a 20th century box there.
Early 20th century, yeah.
And then the Larkin project that we worked on, that we mentioned earlier, this is just an image of one of the puppets that were created that were based on the statues in O'Connell Street. And this has been a great project to work on, because like in terms of working with young people, because these guys were about 12, 13 when we started working with them, and they're all about 16 now. So it's kind of worked with them over the past 3 years. And in Mayo, there's a garden project that is very successful, that works with schools.
They have a lot of skulls, I have to tell you. in the resource rooms, you're tripping over skulls. The kids absolutely love them. You know, you can't sit down but you're sitting on a skull, actually.
We have all those self-directed resources as well that we would have up on our website and that are available when you come in. So schools can come in or groups can come in and actually themselves go around exhibitions.
Yeah, exactly. And just the website is an area that we really want to develop, and we need to develop, particularly because our staff has been getting smaller every year since, you know, the last 5 years. But like, this is where we're trying to make it really content rich, and also, you know, like really it should be a more beautiful website, because it's about beautiful things. You know, just like, I think your talk there, James, is about that. Like, the museum is about beauty as much as anything else. You know, it's about lots of other things, but it is about just somewhere that should be beautiful. And I think our website should be a lot more beautiful than it is, and more accessible. But you know, there is a lot of content there. If you dig for it, we do actually have a lot of content on our Explore and Learn pages. But we're trying to build that content up. So, you know, and we know that young people, that is a medium that young people are using more and more. So we're trying to kind of get ourselves better at social media. There's a really good campaign going on at the moment on our social media about Christmas recipes. One of my colleagues, a couple of my colleagues are working on that, and they're putting up, say, 17th century recipes for Christmas pudding, and you've got an opportunity to make the pudding, then take a photograph, and put it back up there and tell us how it tasted, or how it went for you. So there's some interesting recipes if you wanted to check that out. So that's that. It's 5 minutes.
We've 5 minutes.
Wow, that was good.
I suppose what we're interested in doing now in the last few minutes is just hearing from you about maybe some ideas that you have, or if you want to comment on anything that we've presented you with, or if you, because I mean, collaboration and partnership is something that we are doing, and we would like to be able to collaborate a lot more, I suppose, with people like yourselves and with young people as well, on different programs that we're developing over the next number of years, one of which is around the decade of centenaries. And we'd be interested in knowing how we might be able to work with you around the decade of that program. Because the young person's voice is something that we need to hear. And we'd be interested in them shaping and influencing and informing some of the programs that we will develop.
Sarah, have you got a mailing list? Like, do you let people know? Because I didn't know half the stuff. Like, is there something we could be added onto that would let us know what you're doing?
I'll pass a page around at the end. We have, like, within the education department, we have a mailing list for events, and our marketing department also have a mailing list for our calendar of events. I'm not sure if they're still mailing out now, but But certainly if you leave me an email, I'll be able to add you to ours.
Will Anne Gorman be collecting all the, or giving us names with email addresses?
She has them.
She has them.
Yeah.
Maybe we get all that
Yeah.
information from Anne.
Mm.
Okay, yeah, okay. So any ideas around how we could work together?
Yeah.
Face-to-face contact.
I'm working on adapting a script called Killed. It's based around World War One. And I'm looking at trying to find real characters or real people who fought in World War One. So you would help with that. And then I'm hoping to do it with a youth drama group in Castletown and Heaven.
Okay, very good.
And looking at the cross-border thing as well, why different people joined up. So why a young unionist who supported and signed the covenant signed up, and why a young person who supported the Irish Party in order to get home rule signed up. They signed up for two completely opposite reasons to do the same thing. Interesting idea. So, I'll be up to this.
Yeah, great. Okay.
And I would like to, so that's not been now. I'm kind of working on planning it now. Hopefully maybe in the new year I'll try and get it going between 1914. So maybe for a production in September. But it was working with a group of young people who were say transitioning and be doing it as part of their history course.
If you have a minute at the end, I could have a quick word, maybe. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I'd love to meet up with you just in terms of our programs, with youth groups and our summer projects and so on.
Yeah. Certainly summer is a good time as well for us because we're, like, I suppose, less, I mean, schools aren't coming in, so in terms of our time in delivering workshops or tours, summer is a good time. But, like, you know, if you wanted to bring in a group, say, and we could look at a particular theme and we could gather some handling material together around a particular theme, like it could be women's lives in the 1940s in Ireland, say, for example, or it could be, or just women, if you like, or it could be changing technology or something like that. And we've handling, you know, material. You could bring the group in, they could try stuff on, handle things, maybe look at an exhibition that also links in with that theme.
But I'd even be thinking about taking a step before that, in the sense about maybe just bringing together people who, it's even I work in the same organisation, maybe bringing together a group of youth workers who work directly with young people, some of us who work with volunteers, and bringing in maybe some of the volunteers as well. So you have inputs from different perspectives, you know, and then it's more collaborative rather than I'm doing a bit and then Eve hears about it 3 months later. You know, so I'll drive that and contact you.
Well, that'd be
Brilliant.
fantastic.
It'd be really good.
We're also developing our statement of strategy for the museum, and we're involved in a process at the moment of I suppose, consultation with key stakeholders. So by bringing a group of people together with us, we can actually maybe get some ideas from you as to what expectations, interests and needs you have, and how we might over the next number of years actually meet some of those. So actually if we could do something fairly soon on that, that'd be great.
Whenever you want.
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea, you know, definitely. Because it's amazing, like I remember bringing a group to the a different museum, the print museum, and they were wonderful there, but they never knew, these were kids that would never have a newspaper or a book in the house. So it's an interesting, I suppose it's making that bridge so they can access things really, I suppose, you know. Yeah. Great.
I'd like to, the village we operate from, we've got a youth theatre, and it's Ballytor. It's the only planned Quaker village in Europe, and but it's very derelict and a lot of disadvantage. And but they have a little museum there, Mary Ledbetter Library and Quaker Museum, and the young people at the moment are doing a youth initiative project, which is a Ballytor Living History project, and they're building a trunk depicting the past, the present, and the future. And the idea they have is that the person sitting on the trunk will be the present, and then they have images of the future, with images of the past. That's one kind of idea I'd like to link up on a sort of another level. And also we have a play written, well, it was written a few years ago on 1916 for teenagers as well. And we have I performed with a group in school years ago, or I directed it, sorry. And that's a play we're thinking of reviving at some stage as well. And we took part in the RTE Living History series, and they came down to Ballytour. But the whole thing with the costumes and the authentic costumes and all of that was just a huge experience for the kids when they actually brought the costumes to, you know, it's like we're always trying to make up costumes, bits and pieces of old clothes, but this is like, wow. So just those two areas really. And I'm ashamed really. I didn't know all this stuff was going on in the museum, and the amount of stuff that you have.
On that note, you know, the National Youth Council's arts, I'm not, maybe you heard about this particular conference through that, the email that goes out, the Youth Arts newsletter. So to continue you putting stuff in there so that people are aware of all the museums, not just the Callaghan's Barracks, because just getting that information out there.
Yeah, absolutely, that's it.
Because even we were talking, I was asking what's your one, he was asking what I, you know, then we kind of, you learn what's happening in other museums. Sure, I wouldn't know half them, but I might know something because I have a 2-year-old or something that another one would have a very particular interest because they have a teenager or youth work, you know what I mean? So it's a good way of getting the information out there.
Loads of ideas. You'll be sorry you asked. We'll plague you.
Yeah, and I suppose we're really conscious of the fact that we were asked to finish at 3:15, so try and do that. But we have an evaluation form that we're going to ask you just to fill up, and if you want to just leave it upstairs, even afterwards, or you can leave it, you can fill it out and leave it here. And also, if you have any ideas or anything else that even questions that you might want to ask us after today, feel free to contact us within the museum, and we'd be delighted to hear from you.
Just thank you very much. I'm sorry we just was very short, because I'm still very curious about some of the responses. I'd love to talk a bit more.